Hello, and welcome to Oprah's Book Club. Today we are discussing our favorite book, Communication Theory, A First Look by Griffin. Also here, Griffin, Jimmy, Becca, and myself, Joaquin. So, for those who are just joining us, question 1 was to name the 7 intellectual traditions. I have to say, I absolutely love this question.
I love me a good comparative analysis.
So, the 7 intellectual traditions being socio-psychological tradition, which is the communication as interaction and influence, cybernetic tradition, which is communication as a system of information and processing, rhetorical tradition, which is communication as artful public access, semiotic tradition, which is communication as the process of sharing meaning through signs, sociocultural tradition, communication as the creation and enactment of social reality, critical tradition, communication as a reflective challenge to unjust discourse, and phenomenological tradition, communication as the experience of self and others through communication. So, the intellectual traditions of communication theory are placed on a spectrum between two territories or two theories, the objective and interpretive theories. On the objective side of the theory of the spectrum is the traditions of socio-psychological, cybernetic, rhetorical, and they all pertain to this. On the other side, we have the interpretive territory, or the interpretive theory, which is phenomenological, critical, sociocultural, and I'd like to say that somewhere in the middle we have semiotic. The book,
our favorite book,
places these on the spectrum is not random in any way, shape, or form. It is placed for a specific reason. They are based on that distinction between the two theories of objective and interpretive, as socio-psychological tradition is the most objective, and they move towards across the spectrum. They become more interpretive to the point where the most interpretive is phenomenological tradition. Yeah, so some of the ones I really like is I especially like phenomenological tradition, not just because it is an extremely difficult word to say, but because specifically phenomenological tradition is the communication as experience of self and others through communication. Communication is theorized as a dialogue, and I personally enjoy having that so I can have authentic human relationships with others, where I can sustain them through our common ground that is established through that direct experience of others. It's really our worldview, and that's a straight-up reference from our organizational communication class. My worldview allows me to be able to relate better with my classmates and my friends.
Next up is me. Question 2. We're going to be focusing on this. What are the strengths and weaknesses of two theoretical approaches, objective versus interpretive? And we're going to decide which one we prefer and why. Now, theories. They try to do a combination of 4 things: describe, explain, predict, and we use criteria to theorize everyday experience. The main purpose of theories are to provide explanations and how they can find those explanations. Mainly through two different forms of approaches, in which I will explain. The objective approach says there is one truth that must be discovered via observation, mainly by scientific methodization, while the interpretive approach says there are multiple truths because different people assign diverse meanings to things. Objective theorists, mostly scientists or something like that, find out that the environment and genetics are people's factors. Good theories apply the scientific method and should be unbiased by using surveys and experiments and data. Interpretive theorists, like rhetoricians or philosophers, find free will to be determining. Good theories emancipate people and capture their different qualities and should analyze communicative text through varied lens and utilize ethnography, which is simplified. Objective is more on a scientific approach, while interpretive is more on a humanist. In further differentiation, objective approaches are seen goal-oriented, in which will provide a truth to how communication works and provide a clearer picture of social reality. However, the approaches are also seen as limited and can take a long amount of time, frog in my throat, and research towards finding a single result. Interpretive approaches are seen as critically insightful and are steadfast towards unearthing communicator motivations and hidden ideologies that will improve society by increasing free choice and discouraging unjust practices. However, interpretation is also unlimited and can give several meanings and values that do not provide specific answers towards that theory, which makes it seem endless and unsolvable. If I had to choose, in my own opinion, to which of these approaches I prefer, then, well, let me ask, guys, may I take a few words from you?
Sure. Yeah.
Which approaches do you think is more stronger and more reliable? If you were listening.
I prefer personally the interpretive approach, just because it depends situationally. I think every situation can be different, especially if we're analyzing dialogue. But in my humble opinion, I prefer the interpretive approach.
I have to agree. I really much prefer interpretive. It's all about the circumstances. Yeah.
And again, like our worldview will affect our interpretation of that analysis.
Question 3, which was, everyone studies communication in some way. From your perspective, what makes the communication discipline different from all the others? What do we bring in that others do not? Why is this valuable? Well, the thing is that we bring it to the table as communication studies rather than people who don't. We have a different view on communication than people who don't study it. We see and know what is going on in terms of types of communication and what types of communication is being used while it's happening, while others may not. For example, one who has an understanding of communication may be at an advantage rather than someone who doesn't, because the comm graduate could say the right things to get hired. A comm graduate may be better with his or her words if he or she took their studies seriously. One way in my life how it is an advantage is that I take into account how I present myself every day and how I want people to see my image. Just like how music artists dress and have PR people to help express their image. In my opinion, it is better to know how communication works, and you don't have to be a comm major. But if you know how to use or know when not to use your words, it can make all the difference in how successful you can be. Another thing we bring to the table is we should be able to see through the complexity one is displaying and be able to interpret it and see it as a simple message someone is delivering. Such as when a politician is delivering a speech, we should be able to cut the crap and see what he or she is saying that is relevant, who he or she is appealing to, and how it affects the audience. Communication and knowing how to analyze it will impact one's life immensely.
I definitely agree. All right. And for our final question, we were required to watch a video of Oprah's acceptance speech at the Golden Globes and do an analysis using Aristotle's theory of rhetoric, as well as Burke's theory of dramatism. We were required to do a compare and contrast, and then explain which one we thought was best and the benefits and drawbacks of both. So in Oprah's speech for the Golden Globes, she uses both Aristotle's rhetoric as well as Burke's dramatism. In regards to the dramatism, Oprah uses identification to get her audience to relate to what she is saying. Identification is the common ground between the speaker and the audience. Burke describes the substance of these similarities as the occupation, experiences, beliefs, and attitudes that the audience and speaker may have in common. At the beginning of her speech, Oprah uses identification in her description of experiencing the Me Too movement. She also describes her belief behind the Me Too movement that resonated a lot with the females in the room. She also used a few God terms or phrases in order to get the audience to relate positively to what she was saying. God terms or phrases are terms that sum up all that a speaker regards as righteous or good. In relation to her speech with dramatism, I don't believe Oprah used victimage or mortification in her speech for the Golden Globes. There was no need for her to place blame or take blame for anything during her speech, therefore there was no need to reference mortification or victimage. However, there was a lot of application of Aristotle's rhetoric in Oprah's speech. Oprah was attempting to get her audience to believe that women can do something in this world, as well as a focus on the Me Too movement. She uses inartistic proofs in her speech in order to persuade her audience. Inartistic proofs are external proofs that the speaker does not create. And an example of the inartistic proof that she used was the description of Sidney Poitier as the first African American to receive an award on at the 36th annual Golden Globes. Oprah also uses artistic proofs and uses logos and pathos in her speech. In my opinion, I don't believe Oprah actively used ethos in her speech because she really didn't need to. Ethos is the perceived credibility of a speaker using perceived intelligence and their virtuous character. Oprah doesn't really need to explain her credibility because her credibility as a celebrity is already implied. She uses logos as well in her speech, specifically enthymemes and examples. She uses both inductive and deductive reasoning to persuade the audience to accept the absolute truth of her speech. The most important artistic proof that Oprah uses in her speech is the use of pathos, which are the feelings and emotions that are elicited by the speech. It is clear that the most important tool she uses in her speech, it is clear that this is the most important tool that she used in her speech, specifically when she emotionally appeals to the women in the room. The benefit of just using one theory is that there is more clarity, especially when we're watching the speech. If one were to focus on both at once, they could easily get mixed up. Though there is a benefit to having both theories, the benefit to using both is that we get different perspectives in analyzing speech. It is important to compare and contrast using both theories to gain a greater perspective of the speech as a whole.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you for coming to Oprah's Book Corner. Well, we also talked about Oprah. And there you have it.